Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Atomy Brainwaves, our podcast on education for educators. Brainwaves is produced by our wonderful team here at Atomy. What is Atomy? It's an online teaching and learning platform for secondary education. We provide engaging, curriculum-specific video and text lessons for over 190 subjects, as well as matching quizzes and exam practice that can be used for both learning and formative assessment. We also provide powerful analytics that can help teachers diagnose how their students are progressing and zero in on who might need a little bit of extra help. Our goal is to help make life easier for our teachers, give them more time to work on the most important things, and ultimately help to generate better outcomes. If you want to find out more about Atomy, head over to our main site at getatomy.com and feel free to try it out for free. Today I was joined by special guest Vicki Davis, creator of the Cool Cat Teacher blog and the 10-Minute Teacher podcast. We discussed her experiences creating a global teaching network, the value she has gleaned from making these connections, and the challenges coronavirus poses for teachers seeking that far-reaching connectivity. If that sounds good to you, make sure to subscribe to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you like to do your podcast listening. And we'll never say no to a quick 5-star review while you're at it. In the meantime, give this episode a listen, and I hope you enjoy.
Are you going to teach us anything?
What, you want me to teach you something? You want to learn something? All right. You got it!
Hey everybody, welcome back to Atomy Brainwaves. I'm your host Simon, and I'm joined today by our very special guest Vicki Davis, Google certified educator, keynote speaker, and creator of the Cool Cat Teacher blog and the 10-Minute Teacher podcast. Welcome, Vicki.
I'm glad to be here.
Yes, here at a very early hour for you. For me, it's 11 a.m. Pretty, I've had plenty of time to get myself up and ready. It's 6 a.m. on your end of things, I think I'm right in saying. Is that correct?
It is, but as a lot of folks who follow me know, I have a really early morning routine. So about 5 a.m. is when I get up every morning and have my routine so I can make it through my day. And that's more important than ever because these are not easy times for sure.
No, they are not. And even if it is part of your normal routine, let me be on the record as saying I'm very impressed with your regular 5 a.m. start, early start. And speaking of starts, what I'm going to ask you first is to give us a run through of your journey in education to date. As our regular listeners will know, whenever we have a guest on, we like to just get a sense of where your journey in kind of teaching and education started and what sort of were the twists and turns along the way that led you from there to the position you are in now, which, as we touched on the top, running your own blog, your own podcast, influence in all different areas. So how did you get from starting off to the position you're in now?
So this is my 19th year of teaching, but I got into teaching. I have been a businesswoman. So I went to Georgia Tech. My training was in management. Got into business, but then I was a stay-at-home mom for a little while, dedicated to my children. We have 3 kids, and our 2 boys, they learn differently, and they needed technology so that they could learn and succeed. So our oldest, his 3rd grade teacher told me he would never graduate from high school. He graduated about 4 years ago from Georgia Tech, so that obviously did not come true, but I started off teaching because of my own children. So you could say that was selfish. I don't think it's selfish, but that's just how we are. But helping our kids through their learning differences. I don't believe in learning disabilities. I just believe we all learn differently because we can all learn. And I got that from my 93-year-old mentor, Miss Grace Adkins. So my whole journey, I've had a lot of amazing mentors who've helped me understand the bigger picture of teaching. So got into teaching 2002. 2005, I was at the GAETC conference. An amazing guy named David Warlick, who has inspired many of us, was a speaker at that conference. I went to every single thing that he said. I got his book on blogging and all that sort of thing. I actually spoke to him, and I didn't know much. I said, what's a blicky and how should I use it in my classroom? So I actually mixed the word blog and wiki. Like I didn't even know what it was. And he treated me with such respect. He did not talk down to me. He was, and he started off by saying, Vicki, what you use depends on what you want to accomplish in your classroom. And I've kind of lived by that. I've also lived by treating everyone with respect, because we're all at a different place in our learning journey, and we can't talk down to people because really we're all learners at something. So just started blogging in 2005. I started blogging because I wanted to teach it to my students, and I didn't want to teach them until I actually knew something about it. And people started reading, and I was shocked. I started podcasting shortly after that with a podcast many years ago called The Women of Web 2.0. It's still around. You can hear us interview all kinds of folks. And now, have my own podcast. So it's been quite a while, been a lot of places, met a lot of people. But for me, I try to focus on the most important things. The most important things is our students. It's not us, the people who you might call an influencer. They're here today, gone tomorrow. In 10 years, 5 years. And, truthfully, most people have never even heard of me. So it's not about me. It's about helping students. It's about inspiring teachers. And for me, I truly love kids, especially those who struggle. That's where my heart is. And if I can help teachers take that extra moment, have that extra conversation with people who struggle, then my little tiny corner of the world is making a difference. And that's what it's about, because I teach full-time and I'm IT director. So I get up so early so that I could have a little bit of a order to my day. And these days, is in the fall of 2020, with just the stress we're dealing with and the challenges. I mean, I sanitize my room for an hour to an hour and a half a day. Where does that time come from? I mean, it comes from doing other stuff. So now I'm more behind on my grades or whatever else I'm doing, my lesson planning. But this is the stress that teachers live in. But they need to know that I think this is probably the most important year of my teaching. Probably the most important year of my podcast. Probably the most important year of your podcast, Simon, because teachers need each other right now. We truly are on the front lines. And I've always said, why does it take teachers dying for people to know that teachers are noble and that they love children? Because the only time people really seem to have praised teachers is when they would take a bullet for their kids, or when they, the school shootings and the horrific things that have happened, the tornadoes where the teacher covers the children with her body, which I think all of us teachers are pretty much, that's who we are every day. And now people are seeing that that's who teachers are every day. So, we just need to respect and understand teachers are in a challenging place. But you know what? Kids are too. I think there's a lot of mental challenges that kids are experiencing as well as teachers. And we have to be sensitive and know this is not business as usual. And we better be careful about treating kids like numbers, because they're not numbers. And right now, they don't want to be counted as a number. They want to be an individual that somebody cares about.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And so much of what you're saying with regards to right now rings true. We're gonna get to unpack the present circumstance a little later. But first off, a number of things jumping out to me which are really impressive about what you've managed to achieve with regards to building on your own in-classroom teaching experience outwards through the internet, through blogging, through podcasting. And one thing that jumps out at me from what you're saying, both from what you're saying in terms of the mentors you found and the various people you've connecting with, is this network that you have built. This sort of global teaching network where you're connecting with so many different types of teachers from so many different places, whether that be through appearing on your podcast or whatever it is. And what I first wanted to ask you with regards to that, to building a teacher network, is, I guess, a practical breakdown of the process. We'll get into, of course, the meat of it, which is the value that can be gleaned from it in a little bit. But first of all, how exactly have you built this network? What have been the different steps along the way? We've talked about blogging, podcasting, connecting online, but I guess just practical steps of building out this set of teachers with whom you have connections with whom you can swap expertise online or in person. What are the steps along the way in that process?
Well, it's about people, and a book co-authored many years ago now, 2011, as that many years ago, talks about, communication, building a PLN and that sort of thing. But I think we have to remember that life is just about people. It's just people. And if you have a genuine interest in people, then you will build a network. I think a trait of the modern leader that truly can make a difference is somebody who is humble. Now, I'm not going to proudly brag on humility, right? That's ridiculous. I've heard people do that. But it's something I aim for. We have to understand that people who get too wrapped up in themselves, find the world passes them by. And for me, I don't play king of the hill. I try to make a bigger hill. So I love and rejoice when I find amazing people and say, hey, I feel like, I got a spotlight for some reason. So I'm going to pick up a mirror and I'm going to shine it on all these amazing other people, because there were people who mentored and encouraged me at the beginning. David Warlick, Stephen Downs, a lot of folks who said, hey, here's somebody who might have something to say. And they shared my stuff. So I'm always looking for these amazing voices and these amazing people. And a lot of times they don't know they're amazing. They don't know they're remarkable. They're just being them. And usually Twitter is kind of one of the best places to find folks like that, who are just sharing their stuff. And you're like, wow, you're awesome. You're a really cool person. You can find it on YouTube too. It's a little harder, honestly, to build your PLN now, particularly at conferences, because I went to a conference not too long ago and I was sitting with someone you would know if I said her name. She's a best-selling author. We're both a little older, but everybody in the room was either had somebody on FaceTime or was taking selfies or was taking pictures. And I was wanting to walk around the room, meet people. Hey, who are you? I love to change, Twitter handles, all that kind of stuff. And I literally, she and I just sat there and talked because I couldn't grab the eye contact of anybody. So I think that we have to remember the context of which we are. I think the person in front of our face should take priority over, for me, the 164,000 people on Twitter, because they could care less. They want an inspiring tweet or whatever, but Twitter is entertainment. It's not about me. It's about their however many people they follow. If we can remember that people are who change our lives, people, the books we read, the music we listen to, the places we go, our habits. 40% of the things we do in a day are not a decision, they're a habit. So I'm really intentional about habits. And one of my habits is just, twice a day, I check in. I check in with Facebook once, and I check in with Twitter once. Now, I used to be a Twitter addict, totally addicted, and that was not a good thing. My family suffered. I suffered. I got unaddicted and started running. Last February, I ran my first half marathon. So I turned 50, lost 50 pounds. Ran a 10K one day and a half marathon the second day. So 19.3 miles in 2 days. And it felt good to be the age I am, which feels like a young age to me because I still feel like a teenager, and accomplish something new that I'd never accomplished before. And it happened when I shook my social media addiction and started saying, okay, I got this one life. Nobody's going to take care of me but me. So I've got to take care of myself, and then I'll have more to help others. I'll be able to do podcasts, and just had a 700th episode. So building your network is intentional. It is about your habits. And it's about, I'm always looking for people who have good conversation, following those folks, conversing with people. For me now, it's changed a little bit because I'm just so inundated. A lot of times the people who email me are where I strike up a conversation. So it just depends. But building your PLN is intentional. You should intentionally pick the podcasts you listen to. What's my playlist? I use an app called Castro, which is even hard for me to say that name because one of my best friends is Cuban. And so she's like, don't talk about your podcast app. Oh, wow, yeah. So I always have to apologize for the name of it.
Unfortunate coincidence.
Yeah, the unfortunate name. She's like, stop. But anyway, but it's a great app for listening to podcasts. So I'm intentional about podcasts. I'm intentional about Audible. I'm intentional about, what are the books I read, always reading 2 or 3 books at a time. And then just being intentional about what you do, because you become like who you hang around. Now, it's really hard these days because everybody supposedly knows the truth, and everybody's opinions are cheap. And the other day, so my mom has dementia, and she has sitters. And so the other day I was at Mom's house visiting with Mom, and the sitter gave me all kinds of advice about what I should be doing as a teacher and all about how the coronavirus works and all this kind of stuff. And she's a nice person, but I mean, she's my mom's sitter and did not graduate from high school. Doesn't mean she doesn't know things. She does. But I said, where'd you get this information? And she said, oh, I watch the news here, and here. Well, I think that we have to focus on what are the truths that I know that I have firsthand experience. So I have firsthand experience in the classroom. I have firsthand experience of what it's like to teach kids in masks. I have firsthand experience of what it's like have procedures in place to keep safe. This is our 6th week of in-person school, so I can speak from that. I can speak from the fact that we are still in in-person school after 6 weeks and have been able to put the procedures in place. I can speak from the fact that my kids are learning more than ever, faster than ever, and they want to be there more than ever. And I can also speak from the fact that I'm starting to observe that both students and teachers, that many of them are struggling. I'm not going to say with mental illness, because it's not necessarily mental illness, but it's a massive amount of mental distress and trauma that's causing struggles for kids. I think we're going to see a massive wave of dropouts. I think we're going to see kids just losing heart. Well, I can say that because I experienced that firsthand. I'm not going to sit here and tell you how the coronavirus travels or doesn't travel. I'm going to leave that to the experts. And I think that staying in our lane, staying in our area of expertise, looking for people who are staying in their area of expertise, and not getting distracted by the controversy. Doom scrolling is a new word. It'll probably end up in the dictionary. And it's this habitual looking for negative news on social media that some people have, and it's a habit. You can't doom scroll all day and expect to be a positive, encouraging, helpful educator if you're doom scrolling all day, because you know what? If you want the negative news, you're going to get it. So for me, building a personal learning network is a process that evolves over time. I build it now differently than I used to. It's about who you follow, and it's about who you unfollow. It also is about, so I'm a servant to the world, but not a sycophant to the world. That means to me that I'm here to serve education. I'm here to serve people. Lots of good people don't like each other. So I'm not going to be for everybody, and that's fine. You know, some people don't like my accent. I got an email once like, I hate you because you sound like Holly Hunter. It's like, fine. There's lots of people who don't sound like Holly Hunter that can, be out there for people. But stuff I say is not going to please everybody. Like it's just not. And good people disagree all the time. The question is, can we respect one another even when we disagree? Can we see that I can't assume that I understand what you think? Somebody emailed me yesterday and said, I listened to 5 minutes of this podcast and I hate everything you stand for. And I was like, I'm sitting here thinking, okay, so out of 700 episodes, probably at least, 7,000 minutes of time.
Yeah.
You listen to
How
5
can they know
of
for
them.
5 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, and there's things you want to stand against, but I think that, and that's why a lot of teachers are afraid to share, I'm going to get criticism. Well, my dad often quotes, I think it was Sophocles who said, is if you don't want criticism, do nothing, say nothing, be nothing. Because nobody is going to criticize like a pillow on the floor. They're doing nothing. The people who get criticized are the ones who are doing things. And my thing is to help kids. That's what I want to do, and to help them beautiful, awesome educators who serve them. And doesn't mean I'm perfect, but I do have a dream. I have a dream that remarkable educators will rise up and that people will notice them. And the remarkable educators are not necessarily the people tooting their own horn and talking about their stuff. There are these quiet people. All the time I have teachers who don't want to come on my podcast. Like, I don't think I'm that important. And those are the people I go after and say, please, I know you've never been on a podcast. I know you don't have a blog. I know you're not on Twitter. I know you're not on Facebook. But you're a remarkable educator. Would you just tell a little bit of your story? Because it's going to inspire somebody.
Hey folks, hope you're enjoying the episode so far, and we've got plenty more to come after this quick break. Here at Atomy Brainwaves, we're all about education, and not just for students, for ourselves too. We would love to hear from you, whether that's feedback on one of our episodes or a question you'd like to see answered by one of our guests or by Sue. So, if you've got a comment or a question, don't hesitate to email us at brainwaves@getatomy.com. Looking forward to hearing from you. In the meantime, let's get back to it. Yeah. No, absolutely. And I mean, as you say, there's lots of challenges wrapped up in there, be that in person or oftentimes in the online world, which can oftentimes be pretty toxic, whether that be in education or any field, that can be difficult to navigate. But, I guess it's about using your experience, your expertise to find the good amongst all of that. And on that idea of the good, we'll shine the spotlight on the positive a little bit now if we can. And I just wanted to see if we could have a quick exploration of, I guess, some manifestations of the value that you've gleaned from your online global teaching network. Maybe, it can be a couple of examples, maybe even just one, but of maybe someone who you've connected with, how you've connected with them, and or even a few or a group of people, but how making some connection through this global teaching network, and how that has and the value that has brought both to you, both to that person, and of course to your audience.
Well, for me, I exist because of everything in my life. Like my office, I'm dialing in the microphone, the computer, music, like everything has to do with just making connections, because I didn't really choose the blogging, podcast, all that. The folks out there, teachers, said, hey, we think this person's worth listening to. And I'll just talk about one person who I'll tell her about this later. She doesn't know I'm talking about her. Dr. Lisa Durf. She is my research assistant. I know you've communicated with her. She's a remarkable educator.
Yes.
Yeah, she and I started working together on the very first Flat Classroom project in 2006. And then my struggle has always been to try to stay in the classroom, and because I believe that's just kind of where I'm supposed to be, at least for now and for a while longer, because I think I'm more helpful when I'm there. And so actually for the last 5 or 6 years, in addition to she's a professor, she does all kinds of stuff. She helps me with my email. She researches all the guests for my podcast. She researches everybody that might be a sponsor. And she brings all of everything to, I wouldn't have the podcast that I have. 4.4 million downloads was the last count I had of 700 episodes, if it weren't for my dear friend Lisa, who vetted every single of those 700, set every single appointment. I can never pay her enough for what she does, but she knows a lot of folks, and she networks, I would say, better than I do even. She's got friends in Second Life that hang out. She's just done a lot, and she hates when people talk about her, so she'll just get so mad at me for bragging on her, because she's one of those people who likes to be behind the scenes and just help. But I've got lots of other folks like that too, who help. But because of this network, for me, I've traveled around the world, spoken in 30-something states in the United States. 2 years ago, went to Moscow, spoke there, Middle East, every continent. And why does that happen? It happens because when social media really started taking off, a lot of good started happening. Now, I know there's a lot of negative now that we're starting to see, now that these companies are really trying to manipulate us with algorithms. But in the, quote, early days, Twitter was just the last stuff that all your friends ever posted. So you could see this moment, what everybody was doing. And it was transformational. And I keep hoping for a social network that'll actually do that and not do this delayed 3-day algorithmic prediction of whether people will like what I have to say or not. Because I think people are a compilation of things people like and things people don't. And I don't really know you if Twitter or Facebook are only showing me what I will like that you say. And we're building these filter bubbles that are very unhealthy. But for me, my whole life everything about what I do every day. Last night I was recording a keynote. I'm getting ready to record a keynote for a conference in Saudi Arabia. Podcast, all this stuff. Like every country except North Korea has listeners to the podcast. That happens one person at a time because each person is important. We each have a network. So I just feel like I'm a product of, I don't have the alphabet soup after my name that a lot of folks do. And in fact, I've often had people say, like I was speaking in Silicon Valley at a big company that you would know, and I go up and, I walk up to the table and somebody says, "Hey, would you get me some coffee?" Well, I just went and got their coffee. It's not a big deal. And I got them their coffee, and I went back and I sat down next to him. And he says, "Well, why are you here?" I'm like, "Well, I'm not really sure, but I'm a teacher." And everybody else had all the alphabet soup, and then there was me, the teacher. And a lot of times those circumstances are that I'll be a representative teacher in a lot of places, which I count as a great joy and opportunity. When people do put teachers at the table, I think more teachers need to be at the table and more diversity needs to be at the table. But anyway, so people will say, "Hey, why are you here?" And I'll just say, you know what, teachers decided that I was helpful and talked about it. That's why. So that's pretty much it.
Yeah, and good for you. I mean, you'll find no disagreement from me on that assertion that the more teachers we can have as part of these big conversations, part of these big events, speaking truth to power, I suppose, the better. And it's great to hear that you're doing your bit, which is obviously a very important bit towards that end. The last main thing I'm going to ask you about here today, it is a bit of a biggie though, something we touched on a little bit earlier, is kind of, and something that really, as I'm sure you yourself as a podcaster know, it's almost impossible not to let it bleed into conversations, at least in some capacity, is the present circumstances. What we're going through at the moment all across the world in terms of coronavirus, in terms of the pandemic, the lockdown, various different phases in different countries. And, obviously it's affecting all walks of life. I'm sure it's affecting, you've spoken already a little about how it's affecting your immediate classroom, but just under our umbrella kind of topic of the teaching network, I just wanted to ask how present circumstances and what they've meant for what we can do, how that's affecting your teaching network, your online and offline teaching network, the challenges that it throws up, how you respond to those challenges, and I guess finally, what you think the future might look like. Obviously it's a little bit hard to know, but how, in terms of building out this network and maintaining it, how that might be affected in the years to come as a result of what we're going through at the moment.
Well, you also have to remember in the United States, we've had wildfires, hurricanes, there have been a few earthquakes here and there. So first of all, I think that, if you see the damage after a hurricane or an earthquake or one of these things, you see that there's a lot of rebuilding to do in those circumstances. And when you see the results of trauma caused by the coronavirus, you see that there's a lot of rebuilding to do. And so this is what I believe. We have a choice as human beings. Now, we also see that here in the United States, we've got a pretty nasty political situation. We've got political unrest. We've got protests and that sort of thing happening, and I'm not going to get into that. But we can either, tear each other down or build each other up. And if we, on top of the coronavirus and on top of natural disasters, on top of political unrest, and on top of social media distress and the news media only cares about us watching the news. They don't necessarily care about reporting the truth. If we add on top of that as individual human beings a practice of tearing each other down, then we are going to reach a tipping point from which we cannot return. And I focus on what I know, and I believe that the differences are made when somebody has a dream, like Martin Luther King Jr. did, and talks about, I have a dream, and casts that dream of this is what the future can be. and helps other people get on board and see that dream of what it can be. And his dream was so powerful because it was so positive. It was grounded in reality and the hurts of what the time was experiencing, but it was also positive. We do not move forward by shooting holes in the boat. We can't row forward because the boat's filling up. We can't fly a plane across the country with an empty gas can. We can't drive a car without a frame. I mean, you have to have the engine in it. And the engine of positive change has always been individual people who decided that they were going to work hard, move forward, work together, link arms in a common purpose. And I'm concerned in all of the anger and angst that we're losing sight of a generation that is losing sight of its purpose. And for me, people have said, how can you go back as dangerous as it is, to go back in the classroom, your front line and, all that. And for me, I feel like the risk for my students mentally and emotionally continuing to stay home, some may supervise, some maybe not, is greater than the risk for me coming back into the classroom. And, here's the thing, as you and I have said enough in this podcast for folks to get angry at, upset about, because that's what people do these days. They get angry, they flame, they're nasty. And I think that, my goal is when I get those emails and when I get those tweets and when I get them, and they hurt me deeply, but you just have to remember that if our job is to serve and encourage and help, that some people are just caught in this anger and angst and fury at what's going on. And most people I don't think are angry at each other. They're angry at the circumstance. They're angry at, they want their life back. They want to go to their favorite place to eat. They want to do the things they're used to doing in the fall because we're all kind of self-centered like that. Like, what am I going to do about, my family right now? We have 90 people who get together for Thanksgiving. Right now the conversation is, how are we going to do Thanksgiving? Can we even do Thanksgiving, right? With all of the elderly folks we have. So for me, it's just, can we encourage people, educators, students? Like, for example, my first day of school, I turned to my students and I said, students, remember this. The enemy is the coronavirus, not each other. We're not going to turn on each other. We're going to work together apart. We're going to follow procedures. We're going to do one-way traffic out through the thing. We're going to stay in our zones. We're going to eat a certain way, 6 feet apart. I mean, we're going to do all these things. But we're not going to get angry at each other. We're just going to work together. And whether I'm 53, 63, or 103, when we're done with this, we're going to have a mask burning party because we hate them. Nobody wants to wear a mask. Nobody in their right mind likes it. They're just no fun. But this is where we are, and this is what we do to stay in school. And my student news broadcast goes live today, and they're recording it with masks on, even though they can record with 6 feet apart, and it's muffling the sound just a little bit. But we decided we were going to record with masks on because the kids wanted to represent that this is what we do. And one has a little smiley face, and one has a little panda bear nose. But this is a challenging time. It's affected everybody. But I'll tell you this is the one encouragement I have for educators is when man stepped on the moon, everybody just said that was a huge step. Well, my moon step was this. In my ar the first day of school when students were coming back, I was in my car. I turned off the ignition, but I did not take my key out of the car. And I was sitting there going, can I actually open this door and step out of my car? Because everything in the media, everything in the blogosphere, everything in the Twitter sphere, everything in Facebook says, this is a really bad thing to go back to school, right? But this is what we're doing, and I think it's the right thing. So do I have the guts to take the first step out of my car? That was when I decided to move forward, and I said, okay, I'm going to tell you, that was a hard step. I felt like I was stepping on the moon. I was afraid. I was scared. All of everything of all the past months just came in on me, and I knew that I could turn on that car and drive out of that parking lot, and nobody would blame me. because I had actually been sick the week before, not with coronavirus, but I had actually had pneumonia the week before. So I had every bit of reason to be scared and not want to go back to school. So, but I turned it off. I took the key out of the ignition. I opened the door and I said, I will take this step, as hard as it is. And I trust that every step after this will get easier. And we face as educators times that we have to take that step. And I took that step because I'm part of something bigger than me. I'm part of educating a new generation of kids who needs us. And it's my calling. It's truly my calling.
Yeah.
So, and it's not easy. I'm going to tell you, every day is hard. Every day is scary because the media and we can't go back to school. We can't. Well, I've been back in school 6 weeks. I've seen it. I've experienced it. It's okay. We sanitize everything. We clean everything. But you still have these people saying, it's so bad. You shouldn't be in school. You shouldn't be in school. Well, I actually think that we should be in school if we can figure it out, because I think the kids need us. And but all those feelings, that's what's going on in our personal learning networks. A lot of struggles, a lot of hardship. And I think a lot of teachers are going to say, you know what, I can't go back to face-to-face, but I might do online teaching or online tutoring or online whatever. So you're seeing a lot of teachers change careers in some ways, or change what they do in their career. So, not an easy time for sure, huh?
Not at all. And posing up all different challenges in all different walks of life, and certainly very much so, as you've made very clear there, within the world of education. But a lot of, gotta give you major kudos for stepping up to those fears and for confronting them head on. That is all we have for our central topic today. Thank you so much for talking to us about it. However, before you go, we always like to finish up with our guests by getting a little hot tip for the day. It could be a little anecdote from somewhere in your teaching days. Could just be a fun little piece of advice that you've picked up over the years, but just a little hot tip to close us out. So what is your hot tip for us, Vicki?
So I always say, innovate like a turtle. Slow, steady progress. I always have 3 things that I want to check out on my list, no more than 3. 2 times a week, I take 15 minutes to learn something new and sandbox it. And then I make sure, for me, I try to share 1 thing a week with others that I have learned. So it's 3, 2, 1, lets me innovate like a turtle. So that's my personal philosophy of innovation. And it works because you don't have to go super fast. You can just turtle. You can move forward a little bit every day and grow. And that's what we want to encourage in our students, and that's what we need to do too.
There you go. All those cheetahs out there who are trying to race their way through life. Innovate like a turtle, and in the long run, it'll be all the better for you. Listen, Vicki, thank you so much for coming on, for talking to us, for sharing your experiences and your expertise. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much to all of our listeners. Thanks for tuning in. If you want to listen to any other episodes, you can find them on whatever platform you're listening to this on. You can also check us out on our main site at getatomy.com. For the time being, it's going to be goodbye from Vicki.
See you later, everybody, and just keep moving forward, and I'll make a difference in your area of the world.
Sounds like good advice, and I'll second it, and I'll also say goodbye from me. See ya.